Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald!
No,
around the body. Jazz up!
He's off from inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal from inside the centre. Fuck! I can't believe
it. Hey everybody, good time of day, wherever you are, whenever you are. We need to do like one of those really cheesy time travel movies, you know, like a where are we? More like when are we?
With all the whole tone piano stuff in the back.
I don't know what that means because I don't know all this music stuff.
Just like the time travel sound, just like the...
Oh, I was thinking more like a Twilight Zone thingy. Okay, that works.
That works too.
But yeah, episode 234, Americans Watching the Footy, wrapping up round 6, Easter round.
The meat of a themed round sandwich, because the pieces of bread are
gather round
and Anzac round. And there was a lot of meat in this one. Yes, giggity. You know, it helps that it was spread out over 5 days.
Normally at the end of such a long round, the early games feel like kind of a blur. I don't feel that way this round. I feel like I was pretty locked in throughout. How do you feel?
I feel pretty reasonable about this too. Did have to go back and watch the ending of a couple games just because of when I fell asleep, because I try to keep a pretty normal sleep schedule with having to be on site for student teaching, plus my grad school classes and all. But fun weekend of footy, definitely a fair share of surprises, and a hell of a conclusion.
I mean, I could just simulate, you know how we have like the super gather round sound? You could simulate your teaching experience without going into a classroom. All you have to do is just play like chicken jockey like 50 times.
You hear that, you hear I Am Steve, you hear Flint and Steel. But you don't hear nearly as much right now because the kids at the school I'm at are doing their state testing, or at least the 3rd through 5th graders are.
Yeah, also I went to a movie for the first time since 2018, I think it was. I think Deadpool 2 was the last thing I had seen before the Minecraft movie today, even though I have never played Minecraft. I just thought it would be useful for the memes, and it was actually pretty decent. Like, it was silly, it was cheesy, lighthearted with some good fourth wall breaking. They did a good job of bridging the concepts of like taking real people into the Minecraft world. And there were a couple of like nice underlying messages about like creativity and expressing yourself, which is one of the cool things about Minecraft, I guess. And even as someone whose like knowledge of the game just comes from watching Professor play it, like half watching it was fun. It was good. What else? I mean, it was also end of Passover round, and it's nice to eat actual bread. I observed Passover pretty well this year. I did 2 things that were not supposed to happen. On the second night, I ate a corn muffin, and on the 5th night, because I was at trivia and, you know, we're eating there, instead of just bring my own food, I ate the food that I could that had like the least amount of leavened bread possible, which was like 4 burrito tacos.
You see, there's a question about corn tortillas and things like that. There's a whole debate about corn and other similar
Yeah,
products.
but it was like, I just think that it's not like, you know, puffy fry bread or something. Like, should go for something.
Yeah, I fully observed it, and that included no beer as well.
Oh, and just personally, I decided that beer doesn't count. That's just my personal rule.
To each their own. What was your first post-Passover meal?
Popeyes.
How was the pickle lemonade?
If you like pickles, pretty good. If you don't like pickles, well, you're a bitch. Pickles are good. I guess if you can imagine like a pickle Gatorade flavor, is that a thing? No, I don't think so. There is like, you know, lime cucumber, but not quite pickle Gatorade. But I think the best way to describe it is like what you would imagine pickle Gatorade to taste like.
Interesting. My first post-Passover meal was tamales. because I was craving them, still had some around. But with that aside, let's get to the footy because there was a lot of it. And even if things weren't always the closest, there's a hell of a lot to talk about. Holy Thursday, Brisbane 7-11-53 defeated by Collingwood 16-9-105. Happy 200th game, Jamie Elliott and Nick Dacos. I know that we could just say Nick Dacos and go from there, but nobody is better with space to run than Nick Dacos is, and he's great at creating that space himself too. That was a focal point all game long. A goal, 2 assists, and 12 score involvements from 38, 8 clearances, and 645 meters to go with that as well. He and his brother were really good at that sort of space generating stuff. Josh staying more halfback, but still plenty of opportunities to run. And Collingwood continue with going wide initially out of contests and really playing an outside game. You have side bottom to run the wing as well, and players like Bobby Hill and Bo McCreary who have all the license to run and make the most out of not a whole lot of touches either. I think Bobby was 2 goals from 8. McCreary 8 score involvements, including a goal and 2 assists from his 11. Just fucking fun players.
Back to Nick Dacos. So I try not to just say the same thing about other players that everyone else has said. Like, yeah, you can listen to any footy, anything, and they can tell you that Nick Dacos is good. And if you look at our votes from America's Brownlow last year, we definitely focus on full team contributions beyond just a couple of star players, more so than the umpires. But this game, even if you are the biggest Nick Dacos hater, he was excellent, and Brisbane did not do enough to stop him. Now, you talked about him creating space. I saw more of him taking advantage of space than creating it.
I said he did both. He's very good at, getting out of contests and getting through a little bit of traffic. But I mean, he was given a lot this game too. And that goes back to some of the setup from the back, his brother, Josh, being part of that. Jeremy Howe being very willing to rove as well. There's a reason that he had 7 rebound 50s of his own.
When I think of the most Nick Dacos player, if 20 years from now, after he's done playing, the first image that's going to come to mind of Nick Dacos is going to be him taking a center bounce and just having space and bursting through it and then hitting the open man. And Brisbane gave him space, and you've got to be on his ass from the moment the ball is bounced. And they were not. They tried tagging him in the third with Jared Berry, I guess.
Well, they tried Josh Dunkley at first, mostly at stoppages, and that didn't work. And then Berry also wasn't up to snuff, though he would be the main option, though. Berry is really the best option for a full field tag on the Lions, I would say.
If there's one thing, I guess this team doesn't really quite have a proper true tagger. I think Jasper Fletcher speed-wise could do it, but that's not his role.
I'd want to see him get 10 more pounds of muscle on him too before he does that.
Trying to think of who else even.
Berry has been the one to do it, if anybody. And Dunkley, is just a very solid defensive midfielder, but too important to just reduce to a tag role, I think.
Between that and Brisbane just playing a pretty lousy game on most fronts, Collingwood made this look quite easy.
The Lions did lead on expected score by a couple at halftime before Collingwood did manage to run away with it.
The third quarter was 4 goals to 1. It could have been way more because it was 4-5 to 1-0, 29-6, and it felt so much more lopsided than that.
That was where McCreary had a couple really damaging touches, and where I noted that Ned Long was being strong at clearance again.
Long,
Long with 5 clearances, a goal from 21. What a great addition that I don't think anybody expected to work out as well as he has. And you mentioned this last week, one of the guys that was squeezed out of Hawthorn when they were bringing these bigger market guys in. You wonder, who else could that be?
Collingwood getting the last couple goals in the final 4 minutes of the second quarter felt huge. Ned Long had one after the halftime siren. And at that point, yes, it's 19. And I was thinking yes, we've seen Brisbane come back from worse, but this just didn't have that feel of Brisbane coming back, right?
I never felt that. I just didn't think any one player for them had really stepped up enough. Zach Bailey had done good things most of the time when he had the ball, 7 score involvements in the end from his 10 disposals, but wasn't getting enough, and then did make a pretty crucial error near the end of the third quarter when he really botched a kick that ended up resulting in a Jamie Elliott goal. But by then, that made it a 42-point margin. I just didn't see that one spark really emerge, and that was the case in a couple other games as well this round.
It was tough to find like the polished turd. The inspiration for the award in the first place, Harris Andrews even got beat a couple times. I think we ended up settling on Noah Answorth.
Answorth was their cleanest player out of defense, even with not a whole lot of volume, 13 and 7 marks. Those are the same stats that Ryan Lester had. We love Froggy, but I think Answorth was definitely more functional there. And regarding Andrews, Dan McStay did a very nice job there structurally. 3 goals for him against his old side, and he drew multiple defenders to a lot of his contests too, and that ended up being a problem structurally there for Brisbane. I also wonder, Mason Cox was the late inclusion with Lachie Sullivan out managed. How much did Mason being in, you think, help or hurt Collingwood? Definitely gave Brisbane more to think about on the tall side, and he got a couple good chances, just didn't convert on them.
It frees up Darcy Cameron to do a little bit of different stuff, frees up the other talls. So I think it worked out. And it felt, with some of the lineup decisions with Brisbane, it felt like they're a couple players short of their best team, and that's because they are. But we are quite close to a return for Tom Duday and a return for Kadeen Coleman, both of which will definitely give them a lift and make them look a little bit more complete.
Return for Duday, how about club debut for him? I'm curious about what that inclusion would do for a guy like Jasper Fletcher, who has settled into a defensive role, more of a halfback flank, and I like there. I just hope he doesn't get marginalized.
Yeah, he's fine there. I'm so unconcerned with where Brisbane is big picture, despite how poorly they played in this game. Like, it sucks to get your asses handed to you in one of your more marquee games.
Interesting stretch here for them. After that, they've got Saturday afternoon visiting the Saints, then hosting the Sunday night Q Clash, which I absolutely love. And then, oddly enough, they're going out to Bellerive.
But I'm not concerned because they haven't played anywhere near their best yet, and they're 5-1. For them to be where they are as a team coming off the shortest possible offseason, it feels like they haven't all clicked yet. Lachie Neale hasn't really been all that good. Other guys have stepped up. You feel great about how high the ceiling is, even with this loss. As for Collingwood, I think this was kind of a game that put a lot of people on notice. Between this and the comprehensive win over the Swans a week earlier, they don't have necessarily the magic feel of the 2023 team. I think there's more substance to it, and they're less reliant on pulling close games out of their asses. I don't necessarily trust them as much to win close games, because that 2023 team was on a ridiculous run of that. But, I trust them to just win more complete games. I trust them to beat teams by 20.
And I see the game plan that they've put on these past couple weeks as replicable. I mean, it has been managing to clog the quarter like they did, then start well on the outside. It's going to take some really strong wing play, I think, and some greater physicality, right there at the source to be able to stop them. They did it again. They did it comprehensively to the Swans. They did it comprehensively to the Lions. Those are 2 huge ticks from them, and a lot of momentum for them heading into Anzac Day against Essendon.
You look at their one loss, in which they played very poorly, but it was against a GWS team that really likes to run and up the tempo and push the pace. And in every other game, it seems like Collingwood has just imposed their will and made things that sort of choppy kick mark, not really letting teams get out and transition much. I look at their upcoming games, and I'm really intrigued by how they'll match up with Hawthorn, who they play first in round 12 and then again in round 22. Because you look at Hawthorn's transition game and then you look at theirs.
How about Adelaide round 10?
They do have the Crows twice. That's rounds 10 and 23. But I'm especially interested just schematically in those matchups.
The Kangas are the Detroit Lions.
The pre-Jared Goff Detroit Lions. Important clarification.
Yeah, pretty obvious considering what the Lions have done these past couple years, but I love what they're doing, obviously, starting this whole initiative with the Royal Children's Hospital,
Oh, it's great. And the broadcast felt less like a telethon and more like a football game that with also a fundraiser instead of a fundraiser with a football game backdrop. So that was good. They've done a great job with everything except the actual football, and they got their asses handed to them. And this is a sort of game that I was really hoping to avoid from them, where really third quarter and on, it felt like they did not give a shit. They gave up 15 goals in the second half. Like, Carlton had some very good performances, don't get me wrong. Some of the guys who were net minuses for Carlton early in the year were better now. Nick Haynes, Mitch McGovern. But this was just so embarrassingly flat from North. And yeah, if you're going to have one of the marquee games on the calendar, yes, I get that Carlton get a billion of them. And we don't have to just have the same teams getting all the marquee games. But like, if you want to be in there, you don't have to win, but you have to compete. Place was half empty by the start of the fourth quarter. This was awful. This was the version of North that we had seen in the past few years. And I had thought after that win over the D's, plus the competitive showing in a couple of their losses, that they had turned a corner. I don't see that now. Just so many bad performances. And what sucks is it wasn't just, those guys that like, you can say, oh, it's okay. They won't be part of a competitive team in a couple years anyway.
No, there were a lot of young guys in there. Tom Powell has gone really quiet. Not a great game from Caleb Daniel. Jacob Constanti got late reward, but overall, not good at all. Colby McKershaw, I think he's one of our worst all-round candidates. And then there's the whole thing about their defensive look, questions about whether Charlie Coleman should be playing back or half forward at this point. Luke McDonald actually played with heart and did a couple good things, but other than that, huge struggles. And I don't get the insistence from Alistair Clarkson and company in Aiden Core being an AFL level footballer, because he has not been for multiple years. Sorry, Apples.
Unless his job is to get Richmond a better pick, I don't know why he's out there. Finn O'Sullivan, yes, this was like his sixth game. He was bad. Dylan Stevens ended up with a bunch of touches. I thought he was bad. Like, to make a comparison, I don't think there's a ton of overlap between our listeners and NHL fans. There's a bit, but like, I don't get bothered if the guys that struggle for the Sharks are Alexander Georgiev and Ty Dellandrea. They are not going to be part of Sharks teams that compete. You worry about how Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith play. Similarly here, you worry that Harry Sheezel's only had like one impressive game so far. You worry about Colby McKercher. You worry about, it's a little tougher to worry about Finn O'Sullivan, I guess. But Tom Powell, who I think at this point, I'm just resigning myself to the fact that he's just going to be, he'll have a couple of insane games every year where he looks like a top tier midfielder. And the rest of the time, he's just forgettable and irrelevant. And that sucks because when he's on, he's really good. And I just like to see more decent games out of him. But I feel like I'm usually saying about a key forward rather than a midfielder. What was positive? George Wardlaw's back. He was really good in the first half and then understandably ran out of steam because first game of the year for him. And Paul Curtis was pretty good. But please, I get that you're dealing with, Jackson Archer's not ready to go yet. But where's Callan Dawson or somebody, throw some other guys in there that are worthy of getting a game, because what you've tried with Aiden Core and Toby Pink, this does not work. Or Miller Bergman or something.
You can't just throw your hands up and say, this is what we've got, when at least the Eagles are actually giving games to the younger guys.
If they had put up a good fight and lost by 4 goals, I wouldn't be bothered.
No, and I expected, a 5-6 goal loss, honestly.
Plant some seeds. Give your fans reason to believe that you're competitive, even if it's not leading to wins. The round 1 game against the Bulldogs, even the loss to the Crows, even the loss to the Suns. There were at least signs before they ran out of steam. There was nothing in this. Yes, they won the second quarter. It really didn't do anything. Didn't move the needle at all.
You're looking at the guys who were there in the VFL. By the way, the VFL did win by 2 points. Bailey Scott is playing down for some reason right now. Don't understand that at all.
He's normally a good midfield support piece, which could have really helped with how much George Hewitt and Adam Chera and Sam Walsh kicked their ass.
Will Phillips also playing down. He had an octopus in the twos. 3 goals straight from Cooper Harvey. That's great to see. There's there's some sort of life there. We just aren't seeing a lot of changes being made at the selection meetings yet. And hopefully this is a wake-up call that needs to happen. Because I don't want to just think that the game is Patch Clarkson and he's a broken record at this point. But it's just depressing that the more things change around the league, the more things stay the same at North. And I want to note, I was not fooled by the game against the D's at all. That was against the D's.
It was the combination of that and like the competitive showing against the Dogs.
I mean, they started a couple other seasons recently well, too. They won their first 2 games of 2023 for
Hey, I had made reference to that and said, like, they've done that, but this feels different. And now it feels the same.
I hoped for it to be different. I expected that it wouldn't be, and it hasn't been. As for the Blues, yeah, we mentioned a couple really strong performances. Great to see 3 goals from Jesse Motlop, and also Jesse Motlop and Corey Durden, not mutually exclusive. Durden picked up where he left off last week and had 2 goals himself.
Favorite thing from Jesse Motlop, 29 pressure act.
Hell yes.
But again, Mitch McGovern rediscovering his talent after the Monstars had taken it. Nick Haynes not being a minus. Charlie Curnow kicked 4-3 and got a couple off of bullshit free kicks, which makes me so frustrated because he also had a couple of like outrageously awesome plays where he broke through a tackle. He kicked out of an Aiden Core tackle midway through the third to set up a George Hewitt goal.
I mean, that was Aiden Core that he was dealing with. Oh yeah, Hewitt.
I know, but still, like, the guy is
talented enough that he doesn't need the umpire's help.
He's like Geodude, the Pokemon. I've said this before.
Or maybe really it would be Graveler Golem because he's just bulkier than that. But I get the idea, though.
It's just a ball of muscle and a pretty good kick.
Hewitt, by the way, won the inaugural Super Clash Superhero Medal, a goal from 34, 12 clearances, including 7 from the center. Made things look easy, and he has been the Blues' best this year. I don't think that's in dispute at all.
Oh, no, that's like the least controversial statement, although the umpires will still just keep giving 3 votes to Cripps.
Oh, yeah, your 2025 Brownlow medalist, Patrick Cripps.
Also, Will White, 3-1 off of 12. He, sucked the Jagga Smiths out. But like there are other young guys breaking through that are giving fans hope, even after like Lucas Camporeale's kind of disappointing performance outside of the first half against Richmond. And he had like Corey Durden launching himself back into relevance. Like who saw that coming? Also, I thought despite the numbers favoring Tristan Jarry, at least when it was relevant, I thought Tom DeConing was clearly the better ruck in this game. Only 24 hit-ups, but 11 to advantage. In my eyes, anything over like about 30% of hitouts to advantage is good, and he was at nearly 50. Apparently, Tristan Jarry had 17 of his 43 to advantage, but it sure didn't feel that way watching it.
I think it's also just that Carlton were able to do more off of DeConing's good work, with a lot of that being from Hewitt and Cripps. I mean, I would have loved for North to be able to convert more, but Wardlaw's hunger for the ball wasn't matched by disposal efficiency for him and just energy from the rest of his team.
If the rest of North at least showed some of the heart that Wardlaw did, even if they were similarly unrefined and less talented, you wouldn't be complaining.
Biggest positives for this game for North, we mentioned Paul Curtis with his 3 goals. Good start from him. And then at halftime in the goal shootout, Ben Brown did his trademark log run-up, and it made me very nostalgic.
I missed that. I must have been, what was I doing at that time? Either like playing Wordle or something, or I was in the bathroom. I don't know. Maybe both. Did he start his run up from like the goal square?
Not that long, but it was long enough that it deserved Chariots of Fire.
I would love at some point to record a video with him and the music's playing and he just literally does a run up from one goal square all the way to the other.
No, that's not enough. No, it's got to be from like Optus Stadium defensive goal square, and it ends up at Marvel.
I was just going to say like Southern Cross Station or something.
That could work too. Oh, by the way, the Blues still haven't beaten anybody except North or West Coast since June 21st, so happy 10-month anniversary at this point.
Still, you feel like similar to how, Brisbane got off the mat last year by winning against North during... Gather round. You feel like this at least gives them a chance to understand, like, hey, this is what it looks like. And they've gotten some players that had really struggled to play better. Again, McGovern, Haynes, among others, Motlop. And that can carry over to performances against better teams. And they're going to need that because they've got a pretty grueling stretch coming up.
How about Geelong Sunday afternoon at the G, then visiting the Crows,
Then a Friday night against the Saints.
at the G, despite it being a Saints home game. Love that the Saints are getting another one. Then the Marngrook game and the Giants during round 11 before they have their bye.
And then you have the Trophy Circle King's Birthday Eve game.
For which I might just tip them as of now.
What, against Essendon? That's not controversial at all to say that they would beat Essendon.
It would have been controversial before this round to say West Coast would beat Essendon in a lot of people's eyes. And yet they nearly did, to my definite surprise. West Coast Eagles 11-9-75, defeated by Essendon 11-11-77. This was another one of those games where the Eagles got off to a hot start, and I knew they wouldn't be able to keep up. At least this time, it wasn't just that they kicked the first goal. They actually kicked 5 goals to 1 in the first, but they have only won 2 quarters, both first quarters, for the entire year. And the Essendon win just always felt inevitable to me. I never felt good about the Eagles. I wouldn't say breaking away because they led for much of the contest, but actually having enough of a margin to win.
When it got to like 37-8, you're thinking, is like, all right, Essendon, you should probably get going soon before it becomes too big a hole. And they did. But like, as much as you want to win, like from an Eagles perspective, you can't be frustrated with this performance, can you?
No, you still can. You still can because it's the veterans that let you down. Jack Graham completely misfiring a couple times. Liam Duggan barely existing. I'm not really going to put it on Liam Ryan for playing on and taking that shot, even though it proved costly in the end, because you'd back him in for that so often, even though he's a good set shot. And honestly, I think Liam Ryan just has the right sort of energy for a lot of situations for this team. When he feels it, it matters so much. And I really think he's the type of guy that should have a leadership role. I think that sense of responsibility would just keep him firing and motivated. So I'm not sure how many people would agree with me there. But yeah, I really think Liam Ryan should be in a leadership role.
This game, heck, just the second half made me an Elijah Hewitt believer.
The fact that he was able to turn things around from a slow, bad, and hardly productive first half really impressed me, because that was the first time we'd seen that from him. And whereas most of the other players were going downhill, Jake Waterman was hardly involved after his 4-goal first quarter, Hewitt grew into the game. 2-1 from 22 and 12 contested. And I just want to see, we did have WrestleMania this past weekend. So, I want to see a Triple H in there in the center.
It's time to play the game.
That being Hewitt, Hutch, and Harley.
Time to play the game.
I like Hutchinson.
Hutchinson started off against Zach Barrett, and yeah, for someone on the taller side like him, you don't expect him to be willing to get down and physical, but he most definitely is. Only 9 disposals, 7 of them contested, though. More of a defensive job for him. I do want to see him get the ball in hand more, though. But yeah, just Elijah Hewitt, Jack Hutchinson, and Harley Reid in there, along with Tom Gross. Now, Gross, I didn't like him being the sub, but it very much seemed like a load management thing, and that was ultimately confirmed by the club. I just didn't like the fact that they were managing him for this game in particular, because it felt like such gettable one, even though I didn't expect it. I mean, I currently, don't expect the Eagles to win any game this year. I'll believe it when I see it, and it could even be in the next couple weeks when they host the D's.
They will win a couple games.
By the way, for my gauntlet, I have them winning round 23 at the Bulldogs.
For the funny!
Only because they've done it before, and it was hilarious when it happened. I'll say Matt Flynn definitely looked more like a ruck this game. Now, it didn't help that for Essendon that Sam Draper went down, so losing 2 rucks in as many weeks, Brian with an ACL, and now Draper with his Achilles.
Unit lost.
So, Todd Goldstein and Zach Day, let's go.
I've said this before that I probably pay less attention to the Eagles than I do to any other club right now because A, they're not relevant. B, you take charge on their games. And this was a nice chance to actually like buckle in and watch them pretty closely. And they didn't have like some of the awful skill errors that they had in prior games, other than, that one really bad Ryan miss. It's not like they were giving up goals off of stupid bad turnovers. Like I said, Jack Hutchinson definitely opened my eyes with how well he got into contests. Again, breakout game for Elijah Hewitt. Like, we knew what Jeremy McGovern was. We knew what Jake Waterman was. I had a sense of Jack Williams.
Oscar Allen ended up managed for this game. Maybe kind of a quiet omission. If Jack Williams is the one who would be taken out for Allen to return, don't fucking do it this week.
But like, this was a compelling watch. And while it did feel throughout the second half like, yeah, Essendon should get on top and win this, and they ultimately did hang on and do so.
I mean, they dominated clearances and finally started converting from those.
But like, between this and the Lions game, that's really the only times where I've sat down and watched the Eagles and been like, yeah, this isn't so bad. You got things to build off of. Essendon, once again, Sam Durham, good second half. Archie Roberts stepped up when needed.
It was really a collective midfield effort to turn the game around, and it started in the second quarter with Will Setterfield in the center, easily winning against Tim Kelly. He's another one of the veterans that let the Eagles down. Setterfield then went out to the wings later and joined Nick Martin there, and Dylan Shield definitely turned things on starting the second quarter, going from halfback flank to the center, and of course, Zach Merritt as well. You expected them to get on top of things in the end, and they did. And the way they ended up winning was obvious the whole time with the midfield depth, greater composure in general, and combining that with the Eagles' inability to run out a game yet, and also some less directional kicks inside 50, some hacks and bombs there too. Also, Peter Wright just made Harry Edwards look like a complete clown in this game. I mean, welcome back. Congratulations for that performance. 6 goals, 1 from 17. You got to be happy for him, even if you're an Eagles fan, just because he's been pretty hard done by on multiple occasions with injuries and some surprising omissions near the end of last year. And yeah, just good stuff from Peter, and I hope he could take that form into Anzac Day and keep sparking things for Essendon. Now, I don't want a big ruck split from him.
Give him a few in the forward 50, but no more than that. It was funny. One of our Eagles fan friends that we talk with a bunch, Laza, said like, are you kidding me? Give up goal to fucking Peter Wright? And then it happened like 5 more times.
It's unfortunate that Harry Edwards hasn't started the year as well.
That seems like a guy, though, that you back in through this. You give him a chance to learn.
Oh, of course you do. Look, he's taking matchups that would have gone to Tom Barris a lot. We started to see that last year, and it's continuing. And the only way you're going to grow there is by being thrown into the fire.
I don't know if I ever mentioned Harry Edwards' amazing stat from against Carlton. I don't think I've ever seen a guy get into more than 7 or 8 defensive one-on-ones. He had 12. He went 500 in them, but just they targeted him 12 times. Like, if I'm West Coast, I'm saying, thank you. I need my guy to get experience.
And looking at the other end defensively, Ben Mackay was not the right matchup for Jake Waterman. Essendon realized that. Jordan Ridley, much better job. That's a type of decision and performance that was really a big factor in them getting the 4 points, as well as Andrew McGrath ending up winning out in the second half at some key times against Jamie Cripps. That honestly might have been the most important of the more evenly contested 1v1 matchups.
Between him and Mitch McGovern, it was a very good week for the guys that we thought were getting space jammed. Melbourne 16-11-107 defeating Fremantle. Whoever set the line on this game knew something that the rest of us didn't, because Freo was like favored by 13.5. And I thought, man, that seems really low. Yeah, it turns out they knew something that we didn't. Melbourne matched their highest score for the entire season so far by the end of the first half, that being 74. It helped they kicked 12 too, but there were a lot of easier shots in there. And they held off the Dockers down the stretch and picked up a well-deserved first win from just like a much better team performance. It the guy who gets a lot of accolades here, and deservedly so, is Kazi Pickett, who not only kicked a couple really early, finished with 5 goals to 24 disposals, 10 score involvements, nearly gained half a kilometer. Yeah, he kicked their first goal, ducked to let Harrison Petty mark for their second.
This was one of Harrison Petty's 2 good games for the year. Nice of him to save it for not Geelong.
Yeah, he did a good job in a forward role. Trent Rivers finally played well in the middle, and then as the game went on, Max Gawn really wore down Sean Darcy and kind of kicked his butt. Jack Viney was tasked with tagging Caleb Sarong, did a good job on him, and had one of his more efficient games, I believe. At least that's what the eye test said. Let's see what the actual stats here say. I got to look at that too.
Well, Sarong ended up with 27 still, which was second on the Dockers behind Andrew Brayshaw, but definitely limited influence.
You feel pretty good about holding him to 63% efficiency and 7 score involvements rather than like 12. Yeah, Viney, 76% disposal efficiency.
Easily Viney's best game of the year. It was a really satisfying watch, partially for that reason, because I was waiting for this to happen for him. Yeah, I was surprised that Harrison Petty did end up going forward and Daniel Turner went back. It was a whole reconfiguration of Melbourne's forward look because, yeah, they dropped Bailey Fridge and Jacob Van Rooyen for this game, and both of them just managed 1 goal each in the 2s as well. So maybe they're not coming back in right away, although I would like for them to come in sooner again rather than later once people realize Harrison Petty is not a forward for any more than like a couple good games a year. But yeah, Petty totally got the best of Brennan Cox a week or so after we were really complimenting Brennan.
Interesting that Cox was listed as 6-0 in his one-on-ones because he also gave up a bunch of goals, where I think that's because he was getting beaten on leads to the point where he didn't have like a one-on-one to contest. Here's my thing with Brennan Cox. And by the way, shouts out to one of our favorite Frio fans, and we have a lot of Frio fans we like, but Leanne, who's in Kansas City, mentioning that like he was on bereavement leave before the season. That could have affected his preparation. But he was listed as 6-0 in his 1v1s, which makes me think that like when he was actually able to stay up there and contest, he was good. It was just a lot of the time he was getting left in the dust.
Now, my question is that really the case? That he won all of them, or is it just that he didn't straight up lose any of them? Because it doesn't list contested one-on-one wins. It just is contested one-on-one losses. Maybe there are some that they consider, were halved and there's no clear winner of.
10 spoils. So that implies he actually did pretty well when he could actually contest them. So I think for him, it's all about getting that good first step. But yeah, Frio, I mean, Andrew Brayshaw was one of the better midfielders in this game, and I thought Shea Bolton was awesome. He had 12 score involvements out of his 20 disposals. He did a great job taking advantage of space and linking up.
Was part of the reason why Frio were the more free-flowing team out of halftime, even though he was at full forward to start the second half. But, he got plenty involved otherwise. Josh Tracy was really quiet in this game, and I was waiting for him to get moved around and be an impactful mark over the full length of the ground. That didn't happen. Frio kept looking uncontested like usual, even when I felt they really needed to push the pace. And I thought that before they finally got a few for themselves in the fourth quarter as well. No, Melbourne has still not won a fourth quarter this year. However, they had their highest pressure quarter of the season to finish out the game.
Yes, situationally, they did what they needed to, even if they got outscored for the quarter.
And they've done that plenty in the past. My question about Melbourne is, are they one of those teams that just needs one main tall target? Again, I wouldn't back in Petty to be that guy week in and week out. I would want it to be Van Rooyen long term, but some teams can play well when there are 2 or 3 talls in there. Maybe Melbourne just needs that one guy to look toward a lot of the time. When things were going right for Melbourne in the fourth quarter, though, aside from the pressure, it was definitely a captain's finish to the game for Max Gawn. Handball clearances, the assist to Harvey Langford on their lone goal in the fourth.
As the game went on, it was a build-up for Max Gawn, where he got progressively, incrementally better to the point where probably by halftime, there would have been like 8 other guys you mentioned before him. And then by the latter half of the fourth quarter, he was the guy you were talking about. I don't know how much of it's pacing himself or having better stamina or how exactly you kind of draw it up, but he was the guy that really ensured that this game wasn't going out of reach.
Ended up with 28 disposals, 18 contested, 11 score launches, by the way, which I love, and again, created a lot of clearances for himself like he normally does. This was also his best defensive game of the year with 7 marks there and just taking Sean Darcy out of things a lot of the time.
You mentioned Josh Tracy getting shut down. You didn't mention what kind of contributed to that. Tom McDonald was the one with that assignment, and he won that battle. Well done. Oh, and why was it that Tom McDonald was the guy to match up on Tracy? No Stephen May or Jake Lever. Melbourne's first win without either of those two in nearly 6 years. Jake Bowie also played above his size a bit in defense and managed to start some chains going out of there as well, ended up with 29 disposals, whereas May a lot of the time would be the distributor. If he were in, Bowie slid into that role comfortably. And even with that undermanned defense, Rivers got his time across the middle of the oval and still also had some important defensive contributions. I noted perhaps the DAC of the year at this point to prevent a Amos goal. And I said this a couple weeks ago. The more I think about it, I think it's kind of fun like this when Melbourne's not that good, and we can all be happy for them when they win instead of like getting annoyed that this really good team has fans that don't show up. And it's more of like just describing them. Like, think about this. You know, you tell people Australian football is based in Melbourne. So Melbourne is the best team, right? They're the oldest team. They're the best team, right? Not even close. But when they win, they play a funny song. I think it was one of the Nate Bargatze skits on SNL, like talking about football. He was like, oh, so the team's in New York, the largest city. They must be very good, right? No. Also, they play in New Jersey.
We got to talk about a couple other Frio points here. On the positives, Murphy Reed doing a good job against Christian Salem, 1, 2, and 2 assists from 17. And Isaiah Dundee with immediate impact as a sub, inserted into a game that his cousin, who's like pretty much a spitting image, is lighting up. It was like Kazi Pickett versus Posy Kickett,
except Kazi Pickett less short. I think this made Dudley's case to not just be the sub. You know, I didn't think Sam Switkowski's impact was that big, but unlike the broadcasters, I can actually say his name. I don't think, what was it?
Healy.
Yeah, couldn't say his name right. That like Swiskowski or something. And then my other frustration is just like, you've got all this speed on your team, and yet you want to play this slow, uncontested game. And it makes you wonder, you know, is Justin Longmuir's style right for this team? Like, I think Justin Longmuir is a good coach. I just don't know if Longmuir's tactics and this list mesh.
He hasn't adjusted like, say, Ross Lyon has, where Lyon realized, oh, I've got these weapons who can really move it. Let me release them. I mean, there have been times where Longmuir's released them, but that's been kind of desperation situations, thinking back to, for example, that crazy finals comeback in 2022 against the Bulldogs. But that needs to be the MO more often. Meanwhile, there are also plenty of concerns with the one-on-one defending outside of Alex Pierce. Josh Draper, completely outdone by Kazi Pickett. I mean, there was the point that Pickett said deuces to him, and it was almost like, hey, see you at training in the summer, jackass.
And I like Draper as a ball handler and mover. I like Luke Ryan as the guy who can kind of set things up from the goal square. He was terrible in one-on-ones as well. It's just like, you've got all this speed. You've got Michael Frederick, and he's only getting 8 touches. Why are you always playing like you're trying to sit on a late lead? You know what's funny, though? You know what my lasting takeaway from this game is going to be, despite all of this?
Is it not that DAC that Trent Rivers put on Jai Amos?
No, it's Jai Amos's biceps. Holy fucking shit. I think it was his goal that cut it to 97-91. It was funny because I posted this on like the Fremantle subreddit and a couple other places, and a lot of the Freo fans were like, how is he this yoked and yet he gets beat in one-on-ones all the time? But oh my god, like he flexed celebrating? These are the fucking anchor arms from SpongeBob, which is fitting. You know, they have an anchor on their logo. But this was insane. I showed this to a few people that don't know footy just to show off the arms. And even in a loss that, you hope if you're Frio, you can not forget about this, but look back at it as a low point. I definitely worry that this will be something that gets pointed to kind of as the beginning of the end. Like, I hope that if you're a Frio fan, you can just look back at that image at some point and be like, oh my God, this is what I've said about Bailey Smith and the Rizzler. Like, why do I think the Rizzler is so awesome? Or why was I so excited to get Bailey Smith on my team? Literally just look at him.
Adelaide 7-10-52 defeating GWS 4-10-34, whereas the Melbourne and Frio game was a surprisingly entertaining one. It may have done like a power drain off of this game to get there because this was a total wet fart.
Looking into this Saturday slate, the prevailing thought was this is, like a sandwich with really good meat on shitty bread. And it turns out the bread was amazing and the meat was like super dry. I fell asleep after the first quarter, slept through the second quarter, and then I went back and watched, and it was one of the fastest quarters I've ever watched because there was one goal. And I really could have gone without watching it. This game was 23-10 at halftime. This was awful to watch.
The score always felt like it could have been feasible in American football, even 52-34. That's like your slightly above average Big 12 game.
Yeah, I'm going to correct that. The Big 12 is not as chaotic and high scoring as it used to be, like when Cliff Kingsbury was coaching it, when Oklahoma State was in a shootout every week.
All right, what are we going to say then for 52-34? What conference?
I don't think it's a specific conference other than not the Big Tab. It was 20-3 early. Adelaide had 20 of the first 28 inside 50s, and GWS just never got going. If you had told me that this game was played in like just a torrential downpour instead of the brief downpour that we had in the third quarter, I would have believed it. Just not a lot happened. The only compelling thing out of this game was the win sign on the GWS bench and Max Michelini kicking a goal.
Yeah, Toby Green limited Max Michelini to one goal. And yeah, little Max has a compelling case for best on ground in this game. Being able to stop Captain Toby like he did and get his own offensively, easily his best one-on-one performance of the year. And his goal was the first ever father-son goal for the Adelaide Crows. It finally happened. I can think of another couple interesting things from this game. The Giants banner was decent, robbed by the umpires. Oh, please, you robbed us of JP and cheese, referring to James Peatling, who was suspended for that game, and Isaac Cumming. And, Bharat Sundaresan there for the coin toss. And he had a mouth guard that he put in his sock.
Was it as good as, the pretending you tossed the coin and didn't know where it went? I'm going to say yes, because this is something I hadn't seen before, whereas the Sray thing, that's now been done a few times. This was new. So I really liked that. And his outfit was great. And, his jump between cricket and footy has been awesome. And you're probably not listening to this because you have better things to do, but you're cool, man. Keep up the great work.
Would love to meet you when we make our pilgrimages. Ethan will be doing that this winter.
I thought Alex Neil-Boland was pretty good in just directing play forward. The Crows did a good job overcoming another game where Jordan Dawson wasn't hitting his target. He ended up with 27 disposals, but he was kind of all over the place. Dawson, just under 52% efficiency. What else was good? That 40,000 showed up to a game against a club that's bringing probably fewer visiting fans than anyone except for the Suns. I'd love to know, and I don't have the answer to this, what did the Crows do to prevent this tsunami from ever really happening? Because GWS was just kind of stuck in the mud. Not only was it only 4 goals, it was only 14 scoring shots, period, and that's just not a lot. You always expect them to get into the 20s. This seems like the sort of thing that someone on Fox Footy will be able to, diagram, maybe a view from behind the goals of, where Adelaide set guys up to prevent that. I'd love to hear Adam Simpson or somebody break that down.
A superior defensive setup in general. I believe they did stay with more of a one-on-one look, and that did help. Michelini and Green being the main matchup there, and Mitch Hinge against Jake Stringer. That's a bit of a tougher one to judge, but Hinge has done all right for himself, even amidst some of the chaos last week. And Stringer just didn't get his compass straight until it was far too late, because he did have some opportunities for himself. That's what happens when you kick 4 goals, 10 for the game as a team. But
without Jesse Hogan, that's also worth noting. He was out with calf injury. You really needed Stringer there.
You needed more from Aaron Catman. You needed more from Jake Riccardi.
But let's note, let's not just pin the blame on not having Hogan, because the fact is, this is a team who, even when their forwards are kicking big bags, it usually is coming from getting the surge going in the midfield, and that never happened.
Even though Tom Green ended up with 36 disposals, 16 ground ball gets, and 7 clearances, there was never a time where I thought he was really taking over. Matt Crouch had 26 and 7 clearances. Isaac Reichen with 8 of his own. I say constantly, and it continues to ring true. The Crows are doing it by committee. They had 6 different players you consider being part of that midfield group with 20 plus disposals. Rory Laird with 21, and I think he spaced himself out quite well. Alex Neil-Bullen, you mentioned him earlier, 20 in goal for him. His class matters so much to this Crows team.
It's been a good symbiotic relationship, both how they've deployed him and how he's fitting quickly.
And that, to me, isn't that much of a surprise. He's always been a strong player in good midfield group, and one who's just been underrated throughout his decade at Melbourne. He's bringing all that experience with him. So it's fantastic that he's been able to propel the Crows to some success to start this season. And this was one of the games where I think he might have been more magnified, because he was one of the standout performances in a game that didn't have many of them, honestly. Surprised we haven't talked about Josh Worrell yet in the defensive setup as well, because he was another one who stuck to his assignments well on the taller side, looking after things against Catman and Riccardi, but also knew when to leave, get into space, be that extra guy to support him with the taller assignments, Michael with the smaller and mid-range. That's a very nice thing they've got going there.
It's funny that sticking with one-on-one matchups work, because normally, applying the logic from basketball, you want to keep a team from getting downhill on you. You try going to zone and make them try to, beat you by shooting from outside. And instead here, it was like, we're just going to stick with one-on-ones and not let them get downhill through that. And it worked. A couple losses quickly could change the tone, but Matthew Nix and his staff did a good job planning this thing out. Were they expecting for it to be a game with 86 combined points? I'm sure they were expecting more than that. So it was 33 at halftime, and I refer back once again to one of the worst games I've ever watched that was a combined 34 at halftime, because North and St. Kilda combined for 3 goals and 16 behinds back in round 8 of 2023. And I just wanted to mention that again, because this game was a different type of bad. That game was a bad where everything that happened was bad. This game was just more like nothing was happening. You know the great line from the late, great Bob Cole, everything is happening?
Bob Cole, legendary hockey broadcaster from Canada,
who would be so perfect for this Toronto-Ottawa series. It's a damn shame he's not around anymore. This was the opposite. This was nothing is happening.
Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did. How did you know that number, Ethan? Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters. Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer, no fancy software needed. It's so easy you can edit it while drunk. And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do. Best of all, it's completely free. Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
It's episode 234 of Americans Watching the Footy. You can follow us on multiple social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, at Americans Footy. Personally, I, Benjamin, am on Twitter at BenjaminHK01.
I'm Ethan. I'm on Twitter at Castle Media.
And where is our executive producer?
Trying to sleep right next to me. His name is Brian Harambe, and he is on Instagram at catnamebrian.
How's he coping with things?
Pretty good, actually.
We'll talk about why that is in a bit, although, I mean, it's been pretty widely understood at this point by the time you're listening to this. But we still got 3 more games to get to before that. Wasn't sure that I was going to be breaking out this song again for a bit. Made this one in 2020. Richmond, 12-8-80, defeating Gold Coast 9-15-69.
Nice.
Richmond breaks their Marvel streak against Damien Hardwick.
It was the only way it would be appropriate, let's be real.
I mean, when's the last time that Damien Hardwick led a game at Marvel at the final siren?
The game where he said he hated coming there, they won.
I forgot that they won that.
Yeah, against GWS. It was a good game.
Looking back, that was an 87-83 game, round 9 of 2021. But about this game, Richmond led wire to wire.
I thought Gold Coast got really rattled early by a couple of scuffles that went on involving Tomlin and at times Mac Andrew and a few others. But those were kind of the 2 main parties in it.
Mac knows how to dish and he can't quite take it.
I don't think there's any podcast that capes harder for Mac Andrew. A, because there aren't many Suns podcasts, and B, because I've been hyping up Mac Andrew since the amazing chase down tackle in the VFL years ago.
Maybe we can check on the turn over the tape guys and see what their thoughts are on him after this one. But I know a lot of the talk around Mac is be able to cool things down and also see if you could bulk up a bit, just be able to affect Pax more, especially on the offensive side. I'm not sure how much he's really able to do that, if he can physically manage that. It would be great if he could. I just don't really see it.
Regardless, though, Andrew's lack of composure, I think, carried over to kind of the entire team, giving up the extra goal, a free kick immediately after a goal, because he just kind of slung Seth Campbell. That was dumb.
Obviously, the focal point for this game, starting off the oval and then going on to it, was Noah Balta. I found it completely disgusting that he got more cheers than boos. I also find it completely disgusting that the AFL doesn't have a stand-down policy during criminal stuff. The NRL has them beaten there.
I guess let's jump into this part now. I was going to save it for later.
Is it the part when we talk about the NRL, or is this just Balta discussion?
No, a Balta discussion.
Yeah, I feel like it has to happen now because I want to just first say he is a good matchup for Ben King. He is this team's, I would say, normally second best defender. And once again, he limited Ben to a single goal. This was a guy who coming in was the Coleman Medal co-leader. I guess still a co-leader.
Let's talk about the non-football stuff. The way Richmond timed all this, or was it a league suspension or a club suspension first off?
I believe that was the club that did that.
Did they know the timing of everything, when he was going to have...
I'm not sure. I think some of it might have been pushed back a bit. I don't think they initially set out to have him, play right before his sentencing.
Okay. Because my thing is, if you knew, then this would be really bad timing. If not, I understand. There have been cases in other sports and other situations where players have mid-season had to go do legal stuff because of their own dumb actions. Now, what I don't understand still is why in turn, you now have this stupid ass sentencing where apparently, I'm sure that the team will try to challenge this.
Apparently not.
So fucking dumb.
So we already know
he can't be out after 10 p.m., which on one hand, I understand the rationale behind, the incident was alcohol related. People go out and drink at night. On the other hand, he should be able to go, if he's not in jail and he's allowed to do his job, he should be able to go out and do his fucking job at this point.
So he'll be missing next week Anzac Eve. Round 11, he'll be missing Dreamtime. Round 12 against the Giants. Round 19 against the Eagles, Cleary says. Round 16 through 18 will be dependent on fixturing too.
This is so fucking stupid. It's okay for him to play football until 10 p.m. Then he turns into a werewolf.
That honestly might be the closest thing to it.
This is as stupid as when the French Open a few years ago kicked everyone out at 11 p.m. because then COVID gets like more dangerous. Do you remember that?
I unfortunately do.
I don't know when, but it was a decision governed by science.
That was Roland Garros 2021 farcical sort of thing. I kind of in the same vein, it's not governed by science, but Richmond's not challenging it.
I would, because it's fucking stupid.
I just also think the sentence is inadequate and that he should be facing time.
I just hope that it's a similar ruling that would be handed down to someone else with his past history or lack thereof, regardless of their occupation. The idea that justice is blind.
Obviously, we don't know the inner workings of the New South Wales court system in the slightest.
The other thing that I think should be noted when people go on about getting mad over the AFL suspending people for longer for other things, let's remember that the AFL's jurisdiction mainly has to do with football related things. And yes, sometimes you have to go to things beyond that. But similarly, typically the government doesn't get involved to punish a sling tackle. Different areas have different things they preside over. There are substances that are banned by sporting organizations that you'd be able to take if you weren't an athlete. So I don't have a ton of issue with, the AFL not giving a super harsh punishment for this, as bad as the video was. And as much as I would think, you should probably be doing some time for that, because it's not exactly their main area of jurisdiction.
We say this, and yet I also think the NFL was completely right to indefinitely suspend Ray Rice during his whole domestic violence issue.
The problem is they only did that because they had public video of it. And
Balta also had public video.
Yeah.
Because there was video from Balta, I'm bothered that he wasn't suspended during the proceedings.
All right,
so,
sure.
No, I don't think he should have been able to play this game, but he did. And he was part of the reason why Richmond fared well enough to win it, because he was a good matchup against Ben King again. Was he the best defender in this game, though?
No, that was Nick Blostone.
Now that Jacob Wiedering has made an All-Australian team, the crown of best active defender to never get a blazer is squarely on Nick Blostone's head. He had a season-high 11 intercept possessions for the first half and ended up with 15 overall, 7 intercept marks, 11 rebound 50s. He was able to contain and then start Richmond back. And when the ball did need to get to him, it was the Hopper and Taranto duo having perhaps their best game together. And I say that not just because they won and they both produced, but it's who they did it against, standing up to Matt Rowell and Noah Anderson.
Taranto's been good when healthy. Hopper has been fine, but more forgettable. Both were memorable in this game. And again, I think since joining Richmond, that is the first time that the two of them have done this together.
And what a matchup for it to happen. They combined for 14 clearances between them. Taranto had the bigger numbers. I think Hopper might have had the more important situational wins, though.
But for the most part, Richmond, while they had the best individual performers in the midfield, I thought, they did not have the better midfield in this game. They lost inside 50s by 20, 62-42. They lost stoppage clearances by 7. Richmond won this game because of their defense. Ben Miller was once again 5-0 in one-on-ones. I thought this was Nathan Broad's best game of the year. And then Balta, Blostone pointed out after the game just how important he is with communication in the back. And I think you could see just how much more cohesive they were at defending those forward 50 entries, that everyone benefited from that. And I think that you can acknowledge, even if you think Noah Balta should be banned from ever playing football again, you can acknowledge that he played a damn good game and had an effect on how his teammates defended as well.
We had mentioned Seth Campbell on the small side for Richmond. I think this was the first time that we had 2 good small forward performances for Richmond this year, because Morris Rioli, high impact per involvement. A goal from 10, 8 contested, 7 tackles. You feel his tackles. He had one of his great rundowns, just every time he did something, it's like, thank you. There you are again. I'd love for him, Seth, to both be firing at the same time over multiple weeks. And I mean, between this Richmond win and the Melbourne win, I'm genuinely excited heading into the Anzac Eve game on Thursday.
I'm still not going to let myself get excited because, as we saw with the GWS and Adelaide game, if I get myself excited for a game, a lot of times it underwhelms.
I'm not saying that it's going to be a good game. It's just that's going to be two teams that have a whole lot that they want to prove and another game that they both know is extremely gettable.
We definitely now have more reasons to watch this game than you did a week ago.
If we want to harp on something for Richmond, it's that they, have trouble closing out games, but that's to be expected for a side that just hasn't won a whole lot yet. They lost the fourth quarter, no goals to 5 goals 4.
I'm less worried about that. And it was more just like frustration with, how long it took Nankervis to get on the oval in the fourth quarter, for example. Like Samson Ryan was getting his ass kicked and it took way too long to get that right.
I'm surprised that it was so late for Luke Traynor to come in too. That was like the final 6-7 minutes or so. That was a management thing for him. And I think that's just poor timing for management.
I didn't even realize that he had gotten in the game. I thought we had our first unused sub of the year and I was kind of excited.
I was honestly just disappointed because Traynor, I think we gave him our polished turd vote the week before.
It is understandable that, that they might be shaky in some of these late game situations, considering, you're dealing with much more big picture things first. If you're Adam Uze, you're figuring out what your structure is going to be, what your club's going to look like over the next decade. And then, at some point you get into the finer stuff, but you're dealing with just much more broad and basic things at this point. So it's understandable, even if there were times when it was frustrating and there were things that felt like quickly and easily fixable. Next time they're in a close game, if they can do those things better, like not have Nankervis on the bench for so long while Samson Ryan's just getting crushed in there, that would be good. Other things that were good. Yeah, Rioli, he had like one quarter where it was really striking just how good he was.
The third was when he had his goal when he stuck past Sam Collins. He also had the chase down on Jake Rogers that we both noted.
Rogers, one of the many negative performances for the Suns in this game, I thought.
After a better stretch for him over these past few weeks, too, just was countered well. We talked about Andrew obviously being a weaker spot for the Suns as well.
I mean, he didn't play poorly.
He just got rattled, and that did affect things.
And it felt like until the fourth quarter, they weren't able to get over that. They looked like an immature team in this game.
And without Ben King doing well, it was a struggle for them to really look forward. They looked directionless, kicking too high in like a very past few years Melbourne way. The other one I want to highlight in defense, some good and some bad out of John Noble. Been highlighted the past couple weeks for his volume and his burst off the half back. But once again, just 2 turnover prone as well. You're going to have to take some of the good with the bad from him, but there was too much bad in this game and they couldn't really afford that.
Not a day where if he's playing like that, you want to have him with 27 disposals. I did like a couple of things for Gold Coast. I really like Bodie Hewland, Ben Long, again, just ridiculous his transformation. And I think I've said this before, if you are the Suns and you're trying to recruit players to your club, show them his development. And that will get people, that's how you get excited. That's how you get other players to say like, yeah, I should come here. They will help me improve as a player. Sydney, 10-17-77, defeated by Port Adelaide, 13-7-85. Shit, I forgot to say what, damn it. I had planned to do this for every game. Do you remember once, like last year, I kept referring to every game as a cracking game?
You didn't do that at all thus far.
I know, I was going to do it for like every game, and then I forgot. And then I was going to also say, winning team gets the chocolate for every single game. And I totally forgot. Fuck.
Well, getting the chocolates is kind of more fitting for Easter.
I mean, it's said at other times of year too, but it's especially overused that for Easter.
But yeah, Port got the chocolates. And I wouldn't say in the way we expected, though I'm loving how Zach Butters has impacted things coming back in. The combination of Butters' return and Connor Rosie going off halfback has led to so many things going right. I think we kind of forgot that Rosie had played a lot of his junior footy as a halfback, and his distribution there was always good. He's a very competent full oval player. I think he leads well from halfback. He had early wins against James Jordan, and ultimately that tag was dropped around the middle of the second quarter and left him as a spare man at halfback. And I think the positive to negative stuff for Rosie as a spare man at halfback ended up a lot better than the Lizard on the other end. Now, I like Nick Blakey. I like him backing himself in, but he went too far. Whether it was not kicking through the ball or burning deeper targets, his no goals 3 in the second quarter just stands out so much in a game that ended up tight. And Blakey's poor kicking was emblematic of Sydney as a whole.
Yeah, they were wasteful of opportunities, not just in the forward 50, but kind of up and down. They were playing from behind after a pretty crappy first half where not only did they kick 2-7, I just didn't think they were playing well, period.
You're looking at the team stats, and there's so many things where it looks like the Swans should be winning +8 on inside 50s, +13 from clearances, +46 contested, +42 uncontested. They easily won those battles, but from 61 inside 50s, they only managed 10 goals. And look, overall disposal efficiency below 70% says a lot. And positioning was off as well. I never understood the Tom McCartan forward move. Didn't pan out there, ended up back, and that was pretty obvious in the third quarter, that even more so in the fourth once Aaron Francis came on and had his Wayne Carey-like burst.
I don't think Port played an especially great game. They had some good individual performances that definitely need to be celebrated. First off, Zach Butters was the best midfielder, even though Sydney did end up obviously winning clearances. The numbers said that Brody Grundy kind of beat Jordan Sweet. The eye test put it in the exact opposite direction. And I think, if nothing else, Port Adelaide have gotten themselves into a position where you can pretty clearly say that Jordan Sweet is like a competent everyday ruckman. I don't think anyone's saying that he's, like a top 5 ruckman in the competition, but just that they're at a point, remember where they were a couple years ago, that they're now at a point where they know who they're going to back in that spot pretty much every week at this point. That is a good thing. Lockie Jones, who looked like unplayable at one point not long ago, totally redeemed himself. He had 12 intercepts. I thought he was the most important part of their defense. 10 contested possessions out of his 11 disposals. Hell yes. Like, Alir was not perfect. Asava Radagalea had a very Asava game where he had some good intercepts, but gave away some free kicks, and just like, it was just very on brand for him.
Let's switch gears to some other Port positives. I think they took after the Collingwood game plan from the week before in quite well. They clogged the corridor defensively, tried to force the Swans down the line, and then they in turn looked corridor first on rebounds. That worked from the beginning. And then some of the deeper looks, you could tell that they were trying to get Georgiadis in the pocket a lot. Had he held on to things in this game, this could have easily been like a 5 or 6 goal margin. Unfortunate, of course, that Ollie Wines had to be subbed out. I think his atrial fibrillation popped up again.
I think what had happened there was, he knows how to manage it and he's acutely aware of it. And it's just like, oh, my heart's acting up. I gotta sit. Does that suck? Absolutely. But that he seems to be aware of it and able to manage it is pretty awesome. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's back in this week. And this is just like, just like how some people have chronically lower high blood pressure.
He said he's 100% back to normal about a day ago. So hopefully that is the case. Other big issue for this game was the relayed turf at the Paddington end. Left of screen. 17 days after an Andrea Bocelli concert, it was still a really big problem. I know for both teams, just the amount of slips there, offensively and defensively, hoping that there can be a fix for that before the Swans have their next game over there.
I didn't notice as much guys slipping there as just it looked bad. And I just think it's funny because, it's not like Andrea Bocelli needs a big stage. It's not like he's going to see it. You could just put him out there in like a plastic chair or just a nice chair. Make him sit in the comfy chair.
Fetch the comfy chair.
Unfortunately, there is another incident we have to talk about from this game with, I believe it was a 16-year-old fan throwing something and being vulgar toward Alir has been given a 2-year ban from the SCG. I think we're still waiting on the AFL response from that. I initially, when I saw it, said, if it's a minor, it should be at least through the end of the season. I don't mind the punishment. Yeah, even though they're a minor, good early time to learn that actions have consequences.
If you're old enough to get yourself dressed in the morning, you're definitely old enough to know that you're not supposed to throw shit at people. So really, I don't see it any differently if you're 16 or 18 or 87.
Now I'm just thinking about board games that say like ages 3 to 103.
Yes, like what do you have against like 104-year-olds?
We had actual Sunday night footy for the second round in a row, and I think that's great. And we're actually going to have it 3 out of 4 rounds, as we'll have it for round 8 also. This one, Western Bulldogs 18-19-127, defeating St Kilda 8-8-56 in front of over 35,500.
A cracking game at Marvel. The dogs get the chocolate.
That's not a good thing.
No.
Bont is risen. Alleluia, alleluia. 2-1 from 30, 12 score involvements, 8 clearances, 2 goal assists. He had this moment in the first quarter where he was started at center halfback. That was weird. Then once he got into the midfield, it's like, yes, I am back. This is what I can do right away. And he got forward time too, though some of that ended up being a bit more out of necessity as the game went on, but it's just amazing how quickly he just snapped back into form.
I don't know why he was put in that to begin with. I don't think he really needed to like ease him back in, but according to Andrew Whalen, and I think this is just going off of champion data, but Wheelo ratings as well, his second quarter was the best rated quarter of any player this round, and that checks out with the eye test. It's been pretty well established that Marcus Bonampelli is like probably the most universally well-received and liked player in this sport. I don't know, like, would say you put him on Collingwood and Nick Dacos on the Bulldogs, and there had been, a whole Bontempelli family legacy at Collingwood, and they were showing, his dad all the time. Would he still be liked, or would he be less popular, or like, would Nick Dacos just being a guy on the Bulldogs who's really good, would he be as popular as Bont is, as he actually exists? I don't know, but I love that everyone likes this guy. It's nice to have someone that pretty much everybody likes.
Helps that the Bulldogs don't have like any one main rival. The Giants thing has cooled off, though they'll be playing this week in Canberra. But that's the Anzac week night matchup for the Giants. And I guess maybe otherwise Swans fans still bitter about the 2016 grand final.
I still don't think any team considers the Bulldogs to be like their biggest rival. And that helps. And also just, he's such a good and like non-controversial player. And I just want to like make this a thing where like he's known in other sports. I've said rappers should be name dropping him. Like I would love it if, say you're out in the wild and you meet someone from Argentina, like you're going to just say Messi and that just comes up in conversation, right? Like, oh, you're from Argentina, Messi? It's like, it should be the same with like, you're from Australia, Marcus Bonampelli? Yes, he's awesome. Instant friendship.
I imagine right now that guy will be Oscar Piastri. Congrats to him on his win in Saudi Arabia.
And maybe Gout.
Check in after LA 28, but it should be Bont. It should totally be Bont. He was excellent. Tom Liberatore, you talk about him as being the heart and soul of the team, even when Bont is out there. Tom Liberatore fucking ran down Brad Hill. And he's another one of those like universally loved guys, I think.
Libba was good, as usual, but like you could go quite far down a list of big Bulldogs contributors before getting to him. I love what Riley Sanders does, especially from a handball role. Finished this one with a goal off of 32 disposals, 14 score involvements, and 11 marks. And man, Joel Frazier has really burst onto the scene this year. And I feel like he plays with the smoothness that I've seen from Lawson Humphreys, or I saw more from last year's Lawson Humphreys than this year. More than anything, though, he does it in an inside role. He's one of those guys who doesn't have to get a lot of contested possessions to be an active player through the corridor. He's very good at using space and just like linking up with other guys, and just he plays like he's been doing this for a lot longer than he has. I will admit, like last year, I didn't understand why he was getting the call to play before a couple other guys. Like, I think it's ridiculous that Jed Busslinger still hasn't gotten the call. I will continue to bang the drum for him to get in there.
I wonder if it might happen between VFL form and the need to reconfigure the 50s a bit.
And then Aaron Naughton, if he had kicked straighter, this could have been
even more of a massacre than it already was.
Yeah, he could have had like one of the best forward games of the year.
3-3 from 7 marks for Naughton.
Also, the Dogs hit 6 posts in this game. So if that gives you a sense of how dominant this could have been, I mean, this could have been a 100-point beatdown. I've come to the conclusion that on most days, Sinkilda's a solid team. But man, when they're bad, they really suck shit.
When they get exposed, there's really kind of no way out for them. Now, they were forcing the Bulldogs to the ground early. They got, 3 of the first 4 goals. You saw Jack Sinclair pressing up. Mitch Owens got 2 early goals, putting last week's poor game behind him. That was great.
I think they actually have 4 in the first 5 goals. Yeah, it was 25-8.
Damn. And I thought the adjustments that they made once Sam Darcy went down made sense. But the problem with them is when they get stuck in defense, they really have trouble getting out of that and starting the rebounds. And it's troublesome because they have the natural speed, but they got locked in their back half. All their numbers were there. They weren't able to set up any real slingshots. And when the run of play is against them for any extended period, that becomes a major issue. And again, when they did get forward, especially early, they converted decently. Note that in the second quarter, I noted Cooper Sharman misses that were real let-offs, and it was very clear to me by halftime this was going to be a Bulldogs win.
The positives for the Saints were basically that on the rare occasions they got inside 50, they were good at it, and they were nearly 60% efficiency inside 50, but when you give up 69 inside 50s to 31,
not nice.
You're kind of fucked. Jack Higgins and Mitch Owens did a good job taking advantage of their chances, though. Higgins did have one miss where he could have passed off to an open man, where like if it wasn't someone who's usually a pretty sure kick, I would have been all over him. But because it's Jack Higgins, it's like, I don't blame you for taking that shot. You usually hit that. And that was probably about maybe the 39th biggest problem the Saints had in this game. Because, I mean, they were just awful. Like, and you talked about, them kind of getting locked into their own half. And really, I don't know how sometimes they get out of that unless it's just like, Naziah, go take on the entire team. Do it all by yourself. Hopefully getting Liam Henry more integrated will help. He struggled. He had like 1 disposal and then got subbed out at halftime. Might have been sort of a management, sort of a you're playing like shit thing. We call that, the you suck sub. But I have faith in him getting his shit together. But just, I need to see for a team that's got the speed with those two, Marcus Windhager, like I'd like to see more of that in transition.
All right, now it's time to talk about the Sam Darcy stuff. Thank goodness it is not an ACL, though could take out much, if not all, of his season still. I mean, there have been comparisons being made to, types like Paul Salmon with the sort of tall unicorn player that Sam is, and the whole footy world being concerned for him and just hoping for the best for him immediately is just another good sign that, like, the Bulldogs are such a likable team that is just fucking sucks that this happened to them. I also don't like the fact that they had to show the scenes down in the rooms of him looking distraught, his family coming in. Let them have those private moments, please. I know that he's, a 3rd generation Bulldogs player. There are points where the cameras should stay off and players should have their privacy. Like Max Gawn, for example, after his hamstring injury in the blackout game. That's another example for me.
I think this, it helped convey the idea that everyone thought he had torn it. And like seeing that, I was convinced like, oh, it's definitely torn. And then to find out the next day that it's not was like, whoa, oh my God, okay, cool, great.
The other okay, cool, great was that the Bulldogs did manage to adjust in game. Aaron Naughton managing to convert his shots. Bontempelli with some forward time. Structure there just still needs to be ironed out. You tried Rory Lobb there late as well.
That was just for shits and giggles, like, let's get him a goal.
I would think so as well. By the way, absolutely love his like Royal Children's Hospital logo that he put in his hair this week. This is now like a fun thing of seeing what he's gonna put on his hair every weekend. Like for a guy who rubbed a lot of people the wrong way with his social media presence last year, this definitely helps with some image rehabilitation.
No, this is awesome. It's like he's largely going to be a troll, but when it comes down to it, he's going to do the right thing and be a good guy.
That's another guy that I want to end up meeting.
This is a fun character to have in the football world. Like, I'm glad that he exists and that he gives us something to talk about pretty much every week. And yeah, I think at the end that was just like, hey, let's try to get him a goal too. So I wouldn't look into that too deep.
Yeah, in terms of who you're actually going to have there long term, Buko Kamas was swapped forward in place of James O'Donnell. I imagine they both will get plenty of opportunities at this point. And maybe Jordan Croft cracks the lineup sooner rather than later. The point is, there are options. You're going to have to replace him in the aggregate, Sam Darcy. Of course you will. There's no other Sam Darcy.
Yeah, but he's a one-of-a-kind player.
But the Dogs will have options. It will require a whole lot of leadership, though, in the forward 50 from Aaron Naughton. And honestly, maybe some more situational forward stuff from Tim English once he can get out of the ruck.
You know what? I think now we're going to do it.
Is this the part where we talk about the NRL?
Yes. Storm lost. That's all I got.
Oh, I thought there was going to be more of a connection there between talking about the Bulldogs because, you know, Canterbury had the big Good Friday fixture and they blanked Souths in front of more than 65,000. I thought you were going to be mentioning that, but I guess that ended up falling to me.
Ooh, I actually do have a Bulldogs related thing. I found out today that the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs also have a player named Max King who rated very well in NRL fantasy this week.
Yeah, I saw that as well, that he was one of the most notable players in that 32-0 thrashing of Souths. We had another golden point this past week with the New Zealand Warriors notching a 20-18 home win over the Brisbane Broncos. Ethan has already explained our gripes about.
But they won by 2, which means what? It was off a penalty? Because again, it's like, you know, with the various overtime formats for American football, you still basically play the game the same way, you know, with how to pick up a first down, how to score a touchdown, etc. Whereas with this, it's like, hey, try to do this thing to score that never happens elsewhere in the game. That's my gripe there.
Yeah, it was a penalty.
I still have a lot to learn about, like, what infractions result in a penalty kick and what are just 6 again. I don't know. This is not my main sport. It's about fencing unless it's the only thing on.
Okay. So this was from the kickoff going too long, going out of bounds. It gave the Warriors a penalty, I think, from midfield, and they hit that.
Okay, so this was like a really tough kick then.
You know, based on distance, yeah, directly in front, but distance was the big one. Other weird thing I noticed about the NRL before we move on is their scheduling. I already noticed that there were a couple double ups within the first 7 rounds, and I don't know, that just rubs me the wrong way when you've only got 17 teams. Then you've got this happening so early.
Playing teams twice when you haven't even played most teams once is kind of dumb.
Actually, it's happened twice for the West's Tigers already, splitting double ups against the Knights, and this past week,
Eels.
And I think there might have been another one as well. Yeah, with the Roosters and Panthers already playing twice. 5 weeks apart in a 27-round season. This has been the pod where we talk about the NRL.
Oh, two other Australian things that I have learned.
Did you learn about the stall gift?
I mean, I don't get why it's called a gift, but we can add that too as a third thing.
It began as the Easter gift, and I think the winner got 24 pounds in 1878.
Oh, okay.
That was literally for like the grand prize, $40,000 to the winner.
I did not realize that this is like a staggered race, because when I saw the angle,
Like the angle of Gout's heat.
yeah, I was like, wait, there aren't turns. Why is he so far behind everybody? The track isn't like angled where they're all running the same distance, so that confused me. But no, my two things. Apparently, a portable cooler is typically referred to as an esky, which I guess is short for Eskimo, which, we have like Igloo brand cooler, so it makes sense. Igloo, Eskimo. Okay, I get that.
Are we not going to constantly be talking about our Yeti coolers?
No. And then, you guys pronounce the Y in Hyundai until I saw a commercial the other day where it says it's like Hyundai or Hyundai or something. And it was like, that's a Hyundai. And we're correct and you're wrong. Maybe that should just be our show's motto. We're correct and you're wrong.
Looking up Korean pronunciation, I think like you very, very slightly hear the Y, but not to the extent that the Australians pronounce it. And then there was Easter Monday in front of 88,746, far above even the expectations I had for the crowd for this game. Geelong 12-14-86 defeated Hawthorn 11-13-79. That's the largest Geelong home and away crowd ever, the largest Easter Monday head-to-head. I was glad that I had company to watch the end of this game with. My housemate Dana had gotten back from a weekend away, and we watched the final quarter plus together, and she saw another good ending.
I could not fully enjoy this until post-game.
Is that because of just the intensity even before Brian Myers got concussed?
No, it was entirely because of that. Connor Nash has done the unthinkable, and I now have a Hawthorn player I hate more than Nick Watson.
The thing is, Nick Watson is one who's fun to hate. This isn't fun to hate Connor Nash.
No, and I will say this, he seemed remorseful, which is good. I think that's probably why there wasn't a lot of like fighting after or anything. But yeah, see you in a month, Nash. I was not able to fully enjoy this really exciting win over our biggest and most hated rival until afterwards. After seeing that Brian was like just chilling in the rooms and in good spirits, I felt about 1,000 times better. And then I got a message back. Brian says, I had messaged him just basically, I hope you're okay. Looking forward to seeing you back on your oval, but your well-being comes first. And he said, thanks, Ethan, progressing well since and feeling pretty good. So hopefully stay that way over the next few days. If he stays on the timeline and like passes every measure on the concussion protocol, he would be back for Collingwood. Back-to-back 6-day breaks. It means there is like no margin for error. And I'm just glad that we're even able to talk about that and consider that a possibility after how bad that thing looked in real time.
It was great to see him there in the room smiling and chatting and singing the song. The same ended up true, honestly, for Sam Darcy to a greater scale. I never mentioned this earlier because Darcy ended up resurfacing on the bench during the second half. He was in the huddle. He stayed involved. That's just a huge show of character for him.
Yeah, but like that, it still didn't give off the impression that was like, oh yeah, he'll just be, you still thought it was an ACL tear.
Question for you, Ethan. Did Geelong win this game more than Hawthorn lost it? From your one-eyed cat's perspective.
Hawthorn controlled a lot of stretches of this game and controlled a lot of uncontested play. However, Geelong did a great job taking advantage of Hawthorn mistakes. They capitalized when the Hawks fucked up. And this kind of fit the blueprint of just like typical big game Geelong win where, the possession numbers don't go their way. They don't have anyone with massive numbers. I mean, Bailey Smith's 28 disposals, 630 meters were nice. I don't think he was the best player out there. I think Sean Manna was. I think there's a debate for Bailey Smith getting some level of love from the umpires. He got some recognition in the coaches' votes. I think I'd have him a little bit further down my list. He was good. He didn't take over. He did take over kind of the narratives at one point, though, because he hit Jarman Impey in the face with the ball, which is probably going to be a fine. Like, it was dumb because it basically ended up reversing a free kick because I think it had been like out on the full against Hawthorn. If it had just been a throw-in, I would be less bothered by it, but it also seemed like it kind of poked the bear and woke them up because that was right around when we had our largest lead. I am all in favor of Bailey Smith being himself, and that a kid who grew up a Hawthorn fan has already been indoctrinated to hate them. That is great. But when a game is still very gettable, that is not the time to do something like that. And you notice like Tom Atkins, when they were coming off at halftime talking with him, and you saw that as well like a week earlier, you know, whenever he needed to be kind of like cooled down, Atkins was the one to do that. And, you know, that's more of the stuff when you talk about, you want to say it?
The culture.
Yeah. Like that is an actual culture thing. Like that is how you take care of business and don't make a big scene out of stuff. That is how you keep things in-house.
Tom Atkins, by the way, not mentioned as being like part of any leadership team at Geelong. He is like the most leadership team, non-leadership team member, I think, in the damn league. And the leadership did shine elsewhere on the oval. Obviously, Patrick Dangerfield being that leader in the forward 50. I was really surprised that he was backed in to stay there throughout the fourth quarter, but it ended up working. I thought there were going to be more structural changes once Brian Myers went out. Ted Closey was shaking a couple real bad kicks out on the full that I thought were going to cause changes, but no. Dangerfield stayed forward. Jack Bose stayed in the back and had some clean touches out there. A surprising intercept mark I wanted to note that he had against Blake Hardwick, of all people, that launched a passage that ended in a Reece Stanley goal in the first quarter.
I did not mention Jack Bose on Post-Game Live. I would still like to see him get more of the ball, but he actually did a pretty good job shutting guys down in one-on-ones. And maybe, you know, it's funny that now he's getting into this role and it's like we have enough halfbacks, right? You know, Kolajashny's about to be back. Tom Stewart's in there and actually played a pretty crappy game. We overcame one of Tom Stewart's worst games. And in past years, Geelong could not win bad Tom Stewart games. So that was one of the many positive takeaways I had. But yeah, Bose actually did a good job in his role. Reece Stanley, you know, I thought he was finished midway through last season. He's been perfectly solid since the start of the season and even back to the very end of last year. And that is such a pleasant surprise that this is, you know, he's in the twilight of his career and that he still has like one last burst out of the tank before riding off into the sunset to go probably castrate more livestock.
This is like above cromulent play from him.
Yeah, you know, it's not like Brownlow vote worthy material, but he's been solid. Lloyd Meek got on the coaches' votes. I didn't think he was that good. I thought he was okay.
How do you see the best of the Hawks, actually?
It's funny. I think Geelong did have probably the three best players in this game, maybe the best four.
Those being some mix of Patrick Dangerfield, Tom Atkins, and a guy we haven't mentioned yet in Sean Manna.
And then I would also maybe consider Ollie Dempsey, but I think for the full game, Jai Newcomb, and then even though he was a little sloppy at times, I like Josh Weddle. Just his speed really stood out. You know, his ability to stretch, whether it's along the wing or in the defensive 50, he can steer play to a different area very quickly. That is something he is really good at. Connor McDonald, I did like his second half, but I thought the best individual contributor, Cam McKenzie's first half was ridiculous, and then he was quiet second half. And I don't know if that was just because other guys got the ball more or if something was done to stop him. So when I rewatch this, I'm going to look for that. I'm going to look for who it was that really stopped Cam McKenzie. Because like when we had gotten up 4 goals, my concerns were A, they're not going to keep shooting themselves in the foot like this. B, Cam McKenzie's kicking our asses. And with all the other good players they have, if Cam McKenzie's playing like this, this is very, very scary. And yeah, he was much quieter in the second half. But yeah, full game, Hawthorn's best, probably Jai Newcomb. James Warple probably up there as well. But a lot of his tackles were just part of these. We had sequences, I think it was in the third quarter for both teams, where it was like forward 50 stoppage, ball up, immediate tackle, ball up, immediate tackle, ball up, immediate tackle, ball up.
Geelong did a good job locking things in when they needed to. However, and it was honestly when Hawthorn managed to fight back, both teams did it to an extent, but I noticed it more for Hawthorn's fight backs. They managed a lot through center clearances when the numbers were even.
Even like their first couple goals, the only time they led, by the way, was at 13-12, though it sure didn't feel that way. Like that was their only lead.
I had totally forgotten that they'd led until I saw like 2% time in front late on in the game.
But where they would just get like a really quick center clearance and immediate good forward entry. Like their second goal, Warple center clearance, Mackenzie to Gunston, goal. Jack Gunston had a really interesting game. I think he missed a couple on the full.
I noted that he had left at least 17 points on the board, and one could argue 23 with another setup. He left about as many points on the board as, I'm going to say it, as the umpires did spot Geelong.
Oh, shut the fuck up. That was the first quarter with 2 calls, and then after that, Hawthorn got every fucking call.
Early second quarter was one that I did see as well.
Sean Manna got called for a high tackle on Lloyd Meek in the third quarter. How can Sean Manna tackle Lloyd Meek high unless he's getting a piggyback ride? Sean Manna barely comes up to Lloyd Meek's elbow.
Did that result in the goal directly? I don't think so.
I don't think so, but it was a horseshit call.
Geelong converted off more of the umpiring errors is what I'll say than Hawthorn.
Yes, the one really bad one was where Mark Bledsoe should have just gotten into a Jai Newcomb tackle right away to force a ball up by the goal square. And instead, he kind of like tried to avoid him and then got tackled. And then it should have been holding the ball and basically a free goal. And he spilled it over the line. And the umpire said, okay, that's a clean disposal and a behind. Holland ended up with 24 free kicks to 15, by the way.
It was more again.
Even.
Yeah, it was more again, Geelong taking advantage of stuff in the first quarter and the early second. There was one where Jarman Imby either should have been paid a mark or got an arm chop from Mark Blitzobs. And then another one where I wasn't sure about a Dangerfield mark and a potential high tackle and Tom Atkins potentially going low into a Connor Nash high tackle. It felt more even and less of an issue from there. And then there was one that I wasn't sure about with Shannon Neal maybe taking Jack Scrimshaw out of the play late in the third quarter.
Oh, no, that was a great clean play. And I wanted to talk about that one because I wanted to talk about Shannon Neal.
All right, there we go. Again, I do feel like the right team won. It's just there are going to be umpiring errors and teams will convert off them more than others. Geelong converted more off umpiring errors and opposition errors in this game, and I do feel that they deserved to win.
So third quarter, this was at the end of one of those sequences where it kept going, just a billion stoppages, and this was in Geelong's forward 50. Head Closey kicks to the goal square, and Shannon Neal cleanly, again, this was super clean, not only takes Jack Scrimshaw out of the 2-on-2, he manages to force Scrimshaw to knock Harry Morrison out of the contest as well, which leaves Ollie Dempsey open for the goal. And Shannon Neal, other than dropping one forward 50 mark, had a really good game. And I think it might just be a psychological thing with the forward 50 marking because his contested marking everywhere else on the ground was awesome. And I hope that inspires them to maybe use him at times as sort of like a tall wing.
Please.
And just don't try to shoehorn him into this forward role. It's really short-sighted to just say oh yeah, he's just the replacement for Tom Hawkins. They are very different players. Tom Hawkins has the world's biggest thighs and was great at just taking marks and kicking in the forward 50 and, scoring off of his own hitouts in the forward 50. Compare that to Shannon Neal, who's so good at ground level. Yes, he's also quite strong and he had in some ruck contests, but he's got much more full field use. So don't try to shoehorn him into that role. And broadcasters, let's try not to make the shallow comparison because they're really not similar players.
And then I mentioned Sean Manna earlier. We hadn't really talked about his game much, and I'm kind of surprised it took this long.
Best on ground. I believe it. The coaches believe it. You should too.
I was hesitant at first because a couple of his errors early stood out to me, but reeled himself in.
One early error and one late one.
Reeled himself in, though, ended up with 3-2 and 9 score involvements from 17, 7 tackles as well.
I've said this about Sean Manna.
Let me just say, whereas Dangerfield stayed in the forward 50, Manna's pressure was more evident over the fuller part of the oval, and he had the game-sealing goal.
Before, he has had a couple moments where it's where he kind of plays before he thinks. And it's oh, that's why you weren't playing top-level football until last year. But if he plays that well, you can take the 2 brain farts and just the tackling and the constant pressure, he was outstanding. And I really do think in a game where nobody was individually that great, like nobody got their game rated above 18. And in fact, only one player was above 15, according to champion data, and that being Carl Amon, who was pretty efficient and on the money with a lot of his kicks. Maybe he'll be better on rewatch. I thought he was just decent, but he was clean. In a game where nobody was that good, at the very least, Sean Manna was the one who really won that game. I had already mentioned Hose Mad in reference to the Cats getting a couple of calls their way early and taking advantage and then not getting a call for the rest of the game. You know what else made Hose mad?
Late changes?
Yep. This time O'Sheen Mullen had a hip thing, and I kind of love this because, first off, Mullen totally has a way back in. I don't think Mark O'Connor played that well. I would have had O'Connor as the sub and Closey just in from the start, probably. But when you have, close to 30 guys who are capable of giving you a senior level game, when somebody's just got a minor boo-boo, you can do that. And I don't know how serious Mullen's injury is or isn't, but I'm just saying it happens a lot with Geelong a couple of times because guys were shitting their brains out. And then with a couple of these injuries, again, when you have this many quality players, you're able to do this. And as long as it's legal, keep doing it. And if you don't like it, get good.
You either do what Geelong does and name them and give them as much of a chance as possible, or
I much prefer that to the alternative,
which the Saints did this past week, and that's why I want to mention it. Zach Jones ended up being a late in for Angus Hastie once he ended up being good enough to go. And nobody's complaining about the Saints. Also, just nobody hates the Saints.
Remember how GWS said they were pulling a Geelong and making a late change?
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Did you see what Sav Megafan said this week?
Yeah, why don't you pull another Geelong and actually put up points against Adelaide?
Yes, that was awesome. Awards time.
The round 5 winner for Mark of the Week was Sam Draper, because of course it was, elevating on Max Gawn to take a Jackson Pryor kick on the wing. We both preferred Arlie Dempsey up against Mark Keane. And I feel like we're going to be underwhelmed by this week's winner again, because Jamie Elliott's nominated for really kind of a blasé mark for him. A knee to Ryan Lester's back where there wasn't much elevation. The other nominees, Corey Durden jumped over Luke McDonald, straddled his shoulder while going back with the flight. And then Aaron Naughton jumped from the side of the pack to get one, mostly over Marcus Bontempelli. Durden at this point might be one of the running finalists, honestly. Going back with the flight, getting the position on McDonald, and sticking it cleanly.
Yeah, I'm going Durden here. This seems like an easy one. All right, goal of the week. Last week's winner, I think correctly, was Steely Green, picking up off a pack and scoring while his momentum was carrying him to the boundary. This week's nominees, we've got Patrick Cripps picking up a Sam Walsh handball, kicking a running snap towards the left from the left side. We've got Jamie Cripps receiving a handball from Archer Reed, spinning around on the left in the left pocket to fake a defender, and then snapping it through. And we've got Isaac Heaney picking up a stoppage in the forward 50 and kicking from the right pocket. I'm leaning Jamie Cripps here because in real time, it was definitely the most impressive. None of these really gave me a whoa in real time, but Jamie Cripps definitely got a wow-ish reaction, whereas the others were oh, nice.
The Jamie one was hype for me because Eagles, but also I do believe that his was the best of them. So hopefully the older cousin does win this vote.
I get the feeling the vote's going to go just like Brownlow stuff, and it's going to go to Patrick.
Yeah, unfortunately so. Behind of the week, we had a Daniel Rioli dribbler from the right pocket for round 5. Ladies and gentlemen, and whatever else you want to be called, we have a new leader in the clubhouse after Easter Monday because Jeremy Cameron nearly kicked one of the goals of the century, had his somewhat bicycle action not hit the post instead.
Some people called it a scissor kick. It's hard to describe, but it was awesome. If this had gone through, you would have heard me yelling, you being anybody, whether it's you in San Diego or listeners in Australia or anyone. I mean, it would have been Randy Marsh when he finally got some internet out California way. Assists of the week. Last week was Lockie McNeil handballing out of a Dane Zorko tackle to set up Josh Dolan's first career goal this week. It's Nick Dacos. He got an overlap from Dan McStay and had a really long setup kick to Will Hoskin Elliott that was right on the money, hit him on the lead. That was in the second quarter. Was it like flashy? No, it was just a really nice textbook play. Solid runner-up was Bailey Smith for the second goal of yesterday's game, seeing Ollie Dempsey through a crowd and hitting him right on the money. But the Dacos one, between the length of the kick and that it was like to more of a moving target, the whole thing, it was just like a really nice textbook play.
Worst on round. We had a lot of nominees this week. We had 11 of them that we narrowed down to 4, and this poll is currently live on Twitter at the time of recording. And James Sicily has jumped out to a handy lead over Tom McCartan, Aiden Core, and Jake Riccardi, who is yet to poll. Sicily definitely had the most visible errors and perhaps the most frequent of them, whereas it was more the lack of getting things properly done for Core, McCartan, and Riccardi in comparison. Other guys that we considered, Brennan Cox for his poor game against Harrison Petty, Caleb Daniel, Sean Darcy, just totally outdone by Max Gawn, Harry Edwards getting outdone by Peter Rutt. Ollie Henry, despite the defeat, I was ready to omit him and sub him out in the second quarter. And a couple others from North, Colby McKercher and Finn O'Sullivan. I want to give O'Sullivan some more slack because it's so early in his career, but I'm not sure about McKercher.
And then main character, last week, Willie Rioli, the showing the ball to get Hawthorne really mad, and then the Instagram comments about like his hatred of not Hawthorne's players, but just Hawthorne, which kind of relatable.
But also for you, there is a specific thing with...
Oh no, but I already grown to hate them. For this week, a few players deserve consideration. Marcus Bonampelli for coming back and just being awesome right away. Or well, after one quarter. Sam Darcy, we thought he tore his ACL. Turns out it's just a bad fracture, which, you know, again, lengthy injury, lengthy recovery time, but not season ending. Bailey Smith for hitting Jarman Impey in the face with the ball, which, by the way, I forgot to discuss this earlier. Multiple things can be true. A, it was stupid of Smith to do. B, it was funny. C, Impey totally sold it, and having been hit in the face with footballs and soccer balls and things, you know, get hit in the face with stuff. Falling over was like really selling it. If you're on a basketball court enough, a basketball will hit you in the head. You don't fall over from that. And that's coming at you, you know, like probably faster because of gravitational forces. So that was one to consider, but I think especially with how the discourse has continued, it's got to be Noah Balta between getting selected, playing well in one of the two most shocking results. I don't know if this or Melbourne's one were the most shocking results of the round. And then apparently it's okay for him to play day games, but not night games.
This again, we had our discussion earlier. Go back earlier. We're not doing this again. Oh, one thing that we forgot to mention in terms of worst on round, another reason why James Sicily might be leading things, Ethan.
That he might have killed the Pope.
Now, this isn't quite sacrilegious for us because we're Jewish.
And also considering that Pope Francis seemed to be a good-natured guy with a good sense of humor and was a soccer fan, being from Argentina, like, duh, but like a legit fan, not just a fan of one of the two biggest clubs in Argentina. You know, I think that Sicily kick had missed so wide that it just kept flying all the way to the Vatican and it hit the Pope. And, you know, while it shouldn't knock Jarman Impey over, when you're in your late 80s and you've had, you know, all sorts of health scares and pneumonia and this and that could kind of be what knocks you out.
It looks like His Holiness was a fan of San Lorenzo.
Yes, I remember at the Argentina-Peru game, there were a couple people wearing San Lorenzo jerseys. You know, obviously, like, the two most popular club jerseys were going to be Boca and River.
But yeah, San Lorenzo from, like, his home area of Buenos Aires and, like, an actual card-carrying member of the club. Yes, of course, may His Holiness rest in peace. We've gone on long enough here. Once again, you can find me individually at BenjaminHK01 on Twitter.
I am at Castle Media, Castle with a K. Brian Harambe is sleeping. He is on Instagram exclusively at Cat Named Brian.
We're collectively at Americans Footy on multiple platforms, and we'll be back at you again after Anzac round. Good time of day, and lest we forget.